Well, welcome to our third stream and our first guest. So, for anyone who hasn't, seen us at all before, uh, this is basically an attempt to find a way to build the kind of future that we want to see together, rather than, uh, allowing other people to choose what that's going to be for us. Um, I've This is only the third time we've done this, and like I said, the first time we've had a guest. I'm still not great at this, so uh, please bear with me. But I put together a few caption things, put down at the bottom there. Got a new temporary logo. It's at least something. Still working on that, but. I guess the first thing that I wanted to do, I was considering doing it before the stream, but we didn't have time, is to kind of ask Andrew here, what if you had a chance to look through the website or anything. There's not much there yet, but do you have an idea of what we're doing here, or like what's your perception of it from what you've seen so far?
Right. So I wasn't given a great explanation of what's going on, but my partner Serena basically said that this was an attempt to sort of bridge gaps between different people and different ideologies, to try to make the world a little bit of a better place. Beyond that, I didn't really have time to look at the website. I
Okay,
don't even remember if it was sent to me. So,
that's fine. No problem. So that is an important part of it, but I really want us to make the world more than a little bit of a better place. I think that you know I'll I'll put up the why caption. So everyone recognizes that we do have urgent problems in the world. We might not agree in all cases on what those are. Um, to me, climate change is, a serious issue that we really have to address in the next few years, or we're going to have a lot worse problems than we realize, or than most of us realize. Um, Even setting that aside, just the state of our environment, the things that we've done, overfishing, pollution, um, you know, we have giant patches of plastic in the ocean. We have plastic in
yeah,
well, everything in our bodies because
yeah,
it's ubiquitous, and we produce and throw away so much of this stuff. I mean,
yeah,
there's just endless issues like this, and
right,
right now we only have an incentive to continue them because it's profitable. I
yeah,
think that we need to start talking about what we actually need, what we actually want to do, and whether or not we want to continue down the same road we're on with a lot of these kinds of things. Um,
right. Yeah, I mean, I kind of think of plastics currently the way that we're using them and uh, abusing them and dumping them everywhere. The same way I sort of think of leaded gasoline or chlorofluorocarbons. Um,
yeah,
it's we're dumping this shit into our world without knowing the full consequences of what we're doing.
Hmm.
It's a mess, and I think eventually we're going to end up in that same position where we're going to have to address that. We've been doing this for 50, 60 years, and it's going to have consequences on us.
yeah. Um, it'd be beyond those issues. Wildlife in general. Um, you know, so many species of animals that, you know, we just take for granted that they're always going to be there, or
Right.
that their numbers have dropped off so dramatically, largely due to, you know, human land use and pollution, poaching, you know, overfishing, like I said, you know, like in every ecosystem,
Right.
you know, everything from insects up to the largest animals is just crashing. And, you know, I mean, obviously some species are doing much better and aren't, you know, in danger of extinction. But, you know, the amount of environmental problems we have, I think is, you know, far more than most people realize. But
Absolutely.
that's, you know, only one aspect of things. You know, if you look around our society and our own lives, we have, you know, endless issues that we would like to see resolved, but we see basically no progress on almost any of them,
Right.
because again, the people who are making decisions have different incentives.
Yeah. I mean, I think about, what happened. We elected Donald Trump, and wasn't really great for the country, but we have to look at what happened in Brazil with electing
Bolsonaro.
Bolsonaro. He's made no attempts whatsoever to protect the lands there. He's made no attempt to try and balance out the bad acts of major corporations there. And I
Yeah,
understand that's not an easy thing to do, but
right.
you need to at least have that at the forefront of your thoughts. I
I
mean,
mean,
it's a delicate part of the world.
yeah, that's. I haven't followed Brazilian politics as much as maybe I should, but from what I've seen, it seems like he rolled back regulations and opened
Right,
things up, tried to, you know, make more roads into the rainforest so that people could go in there and clear more land, you know, raise more
right.
cattle, and you know, it just it doesn't make sense.
Yeah, no,
Um,
and I'm not saying I understand it perfectly. What I'm saying is we need to be more careful than he's
yes,
being.
yeah, yeah, yes.
So,
I was just
you know,
trying to say, you know, I feel like he'd been pushing in the wrong direction rather than just,
right,
you know, ignoring it. He was actively moving in the wrong direction.
right. Yeah, it's a mess. Everywhere's a mess right now, but
Yeah,
there in particular just frightens me. It frightens
yeah,
me that someone who is so careless is in control of those regulations.
me too.
So,
So we've only scratched the surface of you know, current urgent problems, but you know, I wanted to kind of get through the rest of these quickly. So long-term
right,
struggles, you know, we have obviously extreme inequality. We have people starving in a lot of
mhm,
places, people who don't have access to medicine, to, you know, shelter, to any of the basic things that I think we should provide to everyone. You know, that's a discussion that we all need to have, but I would hope that uh, the majority of people would come down on the side of uh, finding a way to get the resources that we already have to the people who need them. We have
right,
more food than we need to feed the entire population, you know, multiple times over, I think, and it just doesn't get to the people who need it in a lot of cases.
right.
Um,
Yeah, I completely agree there. I think about how uh, recently there's been legislation that was passed that basically cut child hunger in America in half, and then a bunch of people just didn't extend it. Mostly Republicans. I don't know if any Democrats signed on to that. I don't really pay attention to who's who, but what I know is that it wasn't extended and that frightens me.
Yeah,
It,
that was the child tax credit. It reduced child poverty in the U.S. by about 40%, and
right.
they didn't want to spend the money to keep it going. So I'm not going to take a position right now on whether that's the best way of addressing those issues, but some
No,
way of addressing those issues I think we need to take, and clearly we can do it because we just did it and then we stopped.
exactly. It's like, we are the richest country on earth, so we claim. We may as well do something. It doesn't have to be perfect. It should be something. So,
So yeah, so I mean that's just an example of the multitude of long-term struggles that we've faced that I hope we can address.
Well,
right.
and it's an example from like, well, I mean, it's an example from the United States,
Yeah.
and I think that one of the things that I think uh, that Sean is going for is examples from like globally, for, hopefully.
Yeah, I didn't really mention this at the beginning, and I think it's okay that you're mentioning some U.S. political issues, but um, I want to make sure that we're not turning this into like a partisan political kind of
Right.
thing. This is literally for everyone, and I hope that we get guests who disagree, more. Not that I want you to disagree with me, but
No,
uh,
I think that's
but
healthy. I
but
think
we
that's a
need
good
to
thing.
have those conversations and get to the root of where we may be missing things and where other people are too.
Well, and
Right.
the only reason I brought that up is that, like, right now, like, yes, like Andrew right now is our first guest, and everyone here in right now is from the United States. So of course our focus is going to end up be
Mm,
is going to be issues and
Yeah.
problems that are going to be centric there.
right. And I mean, I'm a New Zealand citizen. My parents live in New Zealand. I have a little bit of understanding of what's going on there, but most of my attention is focused on the United States because I live there, and that's understandable. But I agree completely. We need to be focusing on solutions that are going to work in as many places as they can. Um, I think, if we're going to focus on hunger in particular, United States has a serious problem, but a whole bunch of other places have much worse problems.
Yeah.
So you got to be real careful to not focus in on something that is only going to affect your local community. But at the same time, as an individual, it's important to focus in on what's going to affect your local community.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Um, I don't want to get too off in a tangent right there, so I'll just come back to what I was going to say. But
sure.
um, so I'll just move on for now from these kind of long-term struggles. I hope people get the idea of what I mean by that. So future needs. Basically, what I mean there is the future is being built right now. It is
Right.
not being built by us. It is being built by large corporations, billionaires, politicians who largely work for them rather than for us.
Right.
And unless we make our voices heard, uh, they're going to do what they want to do, and it's not going to be what's most beneficial for us. It's going to be what makes
Yeah.
them the most money.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're kind of in a situation where that is the legal responsibility of a whole lot of people. I
Yeah.
mean, if you're on the board of a company, that is publicly traded, you are legally required to try to maximize profits. That's not great. That
Right.
is not a great thing for society. And I would love to see that change, but it's not going to change.
Yeah.
So we need to figure out how to sort of prevent that from harming the everyday people.
That's where I actually disagree. I believe we can change that. I think that, you know, well, I'll get into it more in a few minutes, but I think we can actually, you know, make the world we want rather than the world that is, you know, has been handed to us and is being built for us right now.
Because
So
that is
Yeah, I
very
mean,
harmful.
oh, sorry, go ahead, Kit.
Well, because that is in fact that does in fact seem very harmful. The push for pure profit over, you know, human needs.
Right.
As you've pointed out, the you know, the, trying to level that over harm has not always worked out, because right now the way that we do it is very reactive rather than proactive, and the pro action has not worked out very well so far, at least.
Right. I think my biggest concern is that legal responsibility. That I don't think is going to change. So even if, you know, the company I work for, the people in charge have a strong preference toward doing good to this world, they're generally good people. But ultimately, they're accountable to people who have this legal responsibility to maximize profit. So it doesn't matter what they want to do. No one's going to listen to them because there's a fiduciary responsibility there. And that concerns me. I honestly think that we need an overhaul to how we handle publicly traded companies ethically in this country, and I don't think that's coming. I don't think anyone's even thinking about that. I mean,
yeah,
I think about people like Elizabeth Warren who really feel like there needs to be a change, and I don't even think she's thinking about it. So
yeah, I haven't seen any real hope on that front, you know,
right,
in our political system, or, you know, even people talking about it enough. Um,
right. But it does bring me hope that people like Elizabeth Warren are making headway in our political system. Um, Unfortunately, that's, you know, a 10, 15-year off thing for me. I don't think
yeah,
there's going to be big change until then.
and, you know, not to get too much into U.S. politics, but as much as I feel like she has some good ideas, and, you know, I have you know, had significant support for her in the past and some right now, I still, I don't feel like she is anywhere near the same ballpark of change that I think we need to make, you know.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, I can't speak to anyone other than her that I think is making the right kinds of statements. But what I would say is, I don't think she goes as far as I would hope she would on some issues. So, and I think that's just where we need to be right now. Is, unfortunately, this country needs to move slowly. That's just how it's always been, and I just don't see it moving quickly.
Yeah, I don't either, and but that's why we're here, because
Right.
I don't feel like we have the time to wait for that. I don't think we have 10 or 15 years to maybe get one or two things done. I think we
Right.
need, you know, massive change in much less time.
Right. Yeah, I completely agree there. Um, I think I would think of it as, you know, we have two options. We have the slow iterative change that is, you know, we try something, see if it works, and if it doesn't work, we try something else. And then we have that huge sweeping change. and that huge sweeping change is where we should be right now.
Yeah.
So
it's honestly where we should have been, 10, 20, 30 years ago. But,
right.
All of the forces we've been talking about are what have kept us on the path we're on. So,
Yeah.
um, so I think that gives some idea of what I mean by future needs. So the weight of history, I think, is one of the major reasons that we need to really consider massive change. Um, Human history is just a long string of power struggles, of people doing what they could with what they had in the places they were. And it hasn't, just like a piece of software or something, if you're familiar with how software is built, if you build on the same thing that has these underlying flaws and things that you can't even question anymore because no one understands what they are, why they're there, or even that they're there a lot of times. As you
Right.
build things up on that, year after year after year, they make less and less sense. They fit with our needs less and less, and they push us in very specific directions, which are not necessarily beneficial. And I think that we should be reconsidering things from the ground up, like from what are the most basic rights and responsibilities that a person in the world should have. And I, I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but starting from there and building up rather than starting from where we are and trying to make fixes with systems that we know already do not work.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm a software engineer, so that resonates with me pretty strongly. But uh, there are no easy solutions for asking someone to rewrite everything
Yeah.
at once. I mean,
Mhm.
we're not going to throw out the Constitution, for example. It's just not going to happen. But we live in these systems that we need to ask ourselves, what are the improvements we can make that would actually address historical problems? And I don't know what those answers are. I don't think a lot of people ask that question who are actually able to make the changes.
Mm.
Um, Unfortunately, I see ourselves, at least in the United States, going down the wrong path on that choice. We're sort of throwing out pieces of the Constitution because we've got four judges in the Supreme Court that are not doing the right things. I see the same thing happening in, uh, you know, less so in India. I think India is doing a fairly decent job of reforming its Supreme Court. I'm sort of excited to see how that goes because that's, I don't know, what, a fourth of the world's population that may be seeing a better country in a few years. So we'll see how that goes. But uh, it's hard to make the decision to say, you know, we've done this way for so long. We did it for these reasons, and now we're just going to throw that out and try something new.
Yeah.
And that can go one of two ways. It can go horribly wrong, or it can go right. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it's a terrifying idea because I know that there are a lot of people who would like to throw out what we have and just install a dictatorship that,
right,
does whatever they want it to do, whether it's a theocratic project or just, purely fascist kind of thing. Like,
right,
it just, you know, but I really believe that those people are in the minority. I also believe that
yeah,
with the right messages from the right people, that the large majority of people are reachable.
Right.
You know, we get so much propaganda from the media we consume, and I mean from schools, from churches, from everywhere that we take in our information. They all have their own agenda, and you know,
Right.
it makes it very difficult for people to know, um, to even agree on the facts of things, let alone to agree on what's the right way forward. You know?
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, I kind of I think it's called the 20% rule, which is that if 20% of people support something, then it's going to change. Um, I kind of think of that. It makes me both hopeful and worrisome because, we can see that 30% of people are supporting uh, basically the status quo, at least, if not something worse. But if it only takes 20% to make a change, then that's a little hopeful for me. Um,
when you look at
it's what I latch onto.
yeah, well, when you look at more specific issues, though, there's actually much broader support
Oh
than
yeah,
we, generally recognize for a lot of, change. Like, the idea of Medicare for all. I don't, know
right.
positively that that's the best way to go. I mean, the UK has the NHS. Maybe that would be preferable. I honestly don't believe that there's any kind of private insurance, model that could compete for,
Mhm.
uh, you know, on the level of care and uh, cost and just being a benefit in our lives, apart from the lives of the people making money off of it. But the point is there is pretty broad support for some of these kinds of ideas.
Right.
It's just not reflected in politics.
Yeah,
And
I mean, when it comes to Medicare for all, my view is that we need to go beyond what other countries are doing. We're supposed to be the richest country in the world. We spend more on healthcare than anyone else. We should be going beyond what is offered in other places.
yeah,
Um, but that's beside the point. I think there is support there for a change. Now, what that change looks like is a little different, but there is support for it. And I think that support is well beyond 20%. And I
yeah,
think there are plenty of other issues that are well beyond 20% support and need to change rapidly. But it's, I want to say, unfavorable to a lot of politicians to actually address those issues.
yeah. I mean, that kind of is a good segue into number 5, failure of institutions. So,
Right.
all of these issues we've been talking about, uh, they've existed for, decades to thousands of years or longer.
Right.
And, um, you know, there's nothing that has succeeded in wiping them out, not governments, not, charities, not, religious organizations.
Yeah.
None of the places that we're supposed to turn for help have ever been able to stop these things worldwide, at least. Um, and I feel like today we're in even worse shape on that front than we've been in a long time. Um,
Right.
100 years ago, people were making real progress. They got the 5-day, 8-hour work week. They put an end to child labor in the U.S. and some other countries. Ended slavery finally. Well, for the most part, we we've made a lot of progress, but then we stagnated and started losing rights and losing, the value that comes out of our labor. It's
Right.
in the last 40 years in the U.S. has gone overwhelmingly to the like top 1% as opposed to most other people. Yeah.
Yeah. We're not in a great situation. This is not an economy that is, uh, shall we say, sustainable. Um, we funnel this much money into the wealthiest people, and we end up back in feudalism. The only way that that actually benefits this economy is if the government decides to go all in on feudalism. That's just what it is. I mean, you can either have a sort of capitalist society where people are able to have social mobility and financial mobility, or you can have a feudalistic society. And if you choose to have the feudalistic society, then this model is sustainable, but not for everyone. And it's only sustainable for the people who are at the top of it. If you choose to have that sort of capitalistic social mobility model, then this is not going to work. Eventually it will turn for the worst. So that's where we are. I don't really know what to say about it because there's really no strong motivation to change it for most people. So
Yeah. But I think that might be changing a little. I think we're seeing through, pushes for unionization, some success there at a couple of Amazon warehouses, a bunch of Starbucks, things like that. But in my view, that doesn't go far enough.
right.
I don't feel like these companies and the people running them should control all of our lives and just we get to argue a little bit for a few scraps around the edges.
Right.
I think we should have more than that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm fortunate that I work for a company that has a couple of fairly strong unions involved in it, but there's no union involving my work. There probably should be, but there isn't. And I don't see that changing anytime soon, despite the fact that, my profession is critically abused everywhere. So it's hopeful to see these union movements. I would like to see them be more involved in uh, changing industries instead of workplaces. So like instead of it being an Amazon union, it's a warehouse union, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
I think that would give workers a lot more power, but
I
I
mean,
don't see that happening.
I'd rather see things like worker-owned co-ops than unions. But as in the system we're in right now, unions are definitely a way to make some gains. But my point there was really that I do see people feeling like they need that change now. People
Right.
not wanting to rush back to work at a fast food place for $7.25 an hour or whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
I think there are big sweeping changes that are happening right now across the workforce, across industries. It's not even just one particular type of industry. I'm hopeful because of those things. I don't see anything yet that makes me think it goes far enough.
and
My worry is that it's too easy to squash those.
yeah. And I mean, right now, this is a super easy to squash movement because there's practically no one here. But I think that this like I'm not trying to sound like grandiose and like, oh, I'm gonna save the world or something. No, that's absolutely not the case. But one movement of massive amounts of people who recognize that we need real change and want to figure out what that change should look like and actually stand together and push for it. That's where I think we can actually, harness
Yeah,
this need for change that people are feeling, and
right.
turn it into more than we're seeing.
Right. And like I said, I don't mean to be negative about any of it. My view is that when we're trying to make these kinds of changes, we should be aiming for, our grandkids to have a better world. Um, Ultimately, yeah, we may make things a little bit better for ourselves, but our goal should be for our grandkids to have a better world. Um, it should be that forward thinking,
It
in my view.
it should, but I think that for grandkids to have a better world, we need to make a significantly better world in the next few years. Like
Oh yeah,
we were talking about before, you know, the the young people right now who are fighting, as hard as they can for, just to have a livable world. I don't know if the predictions that they're basing that on are, if things will be as dire as they fear, but I think they have really legitimate concerns that,
right,
within their lifetimes, within our lifetimes, we could have a lot worse problems than we recognize. And
right.
so at the same time as we're looking forward to, 50, 100 years down the road, we have to be making real change, real fast.
Right. Yeah, no, I completely agree. For me personally, like one of the things I think about is creating generational wealth, which is not something my family has had for a very long time. Um, that starts with having property, and having property benefits me today, but it also benefits my grandkids. And that's something that I think about frequently is, I ultimately should be trying to have that kind of generational wealth, and that benefits me today, not just them in the future. So for me, benefiting my grandkids is about focusing in on the things that I could change in my own life or in my own world around me, that would also benefit them.
um,
Mm.
yeah, this is a hard one to talk about for me because I, I I totally get what you're saying, and I agree that that's the right way to go in the system that we have right now. I also really think that we need to reconsider that system that allows, you know people to not just to build up their families the way you're talking about, and to provide security and something for their future, but almost necessarily provides nothing for so many people, and pushes them into like the most desperate poverty imaginable. It's part of the same system, and I think that we really need to rethink that.
Right.
I know this is a radical idea that probably most people are not going to agree with me on right now, but I think that we should, give each individual person, a certain allotment of land, whatever we want to provide, natural resources, um, whether they are going to use them themselves or, just get the income from the extraction of resources or whatever it is. You know, something along those lines where everyone, you know, is provided for in some ways, and it doesn't rely on their parents having made the right decisions, or their grandparents or great grandparents. Right. And if they, you know, have a really hard time in their lives, it's not just all still away from their family forever. Right. There are a lot of ways that we could go with these things, and I think that we need to really consider what the way that we actually want things to work, rather than just the way they work right now. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of tie it back to what we were talking about when we were talking about the weight of history, which is that, you know, we exist in this system that already exists, and what kind of changes are reasonable versus what kind of changes are not going to happen in this generation or the next. And ultimately, I feel like universal basic income on a county level is maybe going to happen in this generation or the next, but on a federal level, on a society-wide level, it's not likely. And that I think is the core of how to redistribute, you know, the economic and social mobility that we hope for. But
I totally understand the draw of that. To me, the problem is if you keep the system the way it is and you say give everyone $1,000 a month or something, what do you think is going to happen to that? People will raise rents, people will raise the cost of everything until that money is all in their pockets, and you're right back to, you know, the same situation you're in now.
Right, and I'm not saying that's the right decision. I'm saying that's the most feasible decision from our current system. That's the thing I think is accomplishable from our current system.
Right. And, you know, I've spent years thinking about, like, how can we actually make this work? You know, I haven't been, you know, I haven't run for political office or been involved deeply in a party or anything. I haven't been to a meeting or anything for any of these parties. Well, I was on a phone call for one that I would not support, unfortunately. But otherwise, you know, I've donated more money than I should have to candidates who I, you know, really hoped could make change. But what I've come to realize is that the system that we have right now is, you know, so deeply entrenched in what it's doing and not in what we want or need, that we really have to think outside of it. And, you know, we do have the power to force change through the system, but we can't just ask for it, like call your senator and, oh, please pass this thing. It doesn't work. They're not moved by your requests unless it's something that's inconsequential to them. They do what their big donors want them to do, what works for the system that they believe in or claim to believe in. And you know, if they ever pass the UBI, it'll be because they feel like that's the only choice. Like, we've automated so many jobs that you know, the go out and get a job isn't an answer anymore, and they just like, well, here's your pittance, but we're going to keep the rest. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of agree in the sense that the motivations for our politicians are wrong. there's a strong incentive to listen to lobbyists as opposed to your actual constituents. I can speak good words. There is that incentive. It exists, but at the same time, ultimately, our politicians are very much afraid of their constituents saying enough is enough. They may not be afraid of that right this moment, but they're afraid of that in the future. And they try their hardest to sort of prevent us from thinking about what they've done wrong when election time comes. And they do that for a very strong reason, which is that, we could vote them out and then they're screwed. It's not a great situation we're in, but the reality is, I think what we need to focus on are the changes that we believe will make the biggest impact and not be unpalatable to our politicians. Because the next person, we might say, maybe we'll get lucky. We'll get someone who is radically for our beliefs. Maybe we'll get lucky. We say that over and over again. It never happens.
Yeah.
We need to focus on the change that we believe is palatable, not just to ourselves, but to our politicians.
That's something I strongly disagree with. I am far beyond caring what they find palatable, and I am seriously offended by the way that they treat us, the way that they treat their responsibilities and the world, and the corruption, the lack of care, the fact that just because it's politically advantageous to them at the moment, they will run up and immediately do something to benefit themselves, but will take decades to do even a fraction of something that we might desperately need. I just don't find any way of getting through these people in the way that it was intended. They're not, in my view, our actual representatives anymore.
Right. Okay. So maybe I can push back on that in a different way. How do we make it palatable to them?
I think we don't make it palatable to them. We use our power, collective power, to force them to do what we want. And I'm not saying violence. I'm explicitly saying nonviolence. But we have the ability with enough numbers to shut down the economic system, completely. That's what they care about. If we have demands, if we know what we need to do, and we have enough people behind a list of demands that we need to implement quickly to make the change that we know we need to make, I think we just make them do it. And I don't think there's any other way, to make it happen, within the next multiple decades. If you have an idea, I'm all ears, but I haven't heard one.
Well, mostly what I'm getting at is, if you want to see radical change from your everyday politician, not someone like AOC, not someone who is a member of the squad who is very progressive, but people who are, not the people whose names you're hearing regularly. There are many members of the House and many members of the Senate whose names you're just not going to hear. How do you get them on board with it? And I think that protesting, standing up and saying that enough is enough, that has weight. I'm not saying it doesn't. However, I think we need to convince them that this is the way, or they're going to be out of office. And I don't see a solid way of doing that right now.
Well, so getting them out of office is unfortunately very difficult because they have so much money behind them, and they are literally allowed to make in their political ads. You know,
Right.
I have plenty, but I don't know how deep we want to get into that right now. But you know, it is very difficult to get incumbents out because of the way the system is set up right now. Um, I, I still think that threat, matters to a lot of them.
Yeah,
In some
it does.
cases, I'm not sure that it matters, like with Cinema, who is our senator, unfortunately.
Yeah.
She hasn't seemed to, care very much that, the things she has done have been very unpopular. I don't know whether she just plans to go get a lobbying job or some other, high paid position after her term, or if she thinks people have just forgotten about what she did early on by the time she's up for reelection. But, I think that there is, something to trying to scare them with that. But I think that what really scares them is what I was talking about, which is not just, protests. I don't think people just going out in the street and saying we want this is going to do it. I think that a general strike, if necessary, where their actual, financial interests and the financial interests of their donors are threatened. I think that, that is what can actually push them to make, the changes we need.
Well, I mean, we'll see. I think if this Supreme Court ruling over Roe v. Wade ends up happening, that is the best opportunity we have as a society to say this is the time for a general strike. If it doesn't happen there, it's not going to happen anywhere else. So we'll see. If that doesn't happen, we need to look for an alternative.
Well, so maybe I'm open to alternatives for sure. One of the reasons for having people here is because I don't have all the answers. I'm trying to figure out what the right way to go is, and I may be completely. This is the best that I've come up with so far. As far as a general strike over that ruling, I can't really see that happening. I mean, if it does,
That's
great.
why I'm concerned.
But it's an issue that people are very divided on, and I don't think they really feel like they have the power to change it. The politicians are saying, "Look, we delivered what we want, what we told you we're going to deliver," or they're saying, horrible this is, vote for us because we didn't do this, and maybe one day we'll fix it. They're not offering any actual solutions for the near term, but so with that issue, it brings me back to something that I think is really important, and that's bodily autonomy. I think that we may have a lot more success having a more deep discussion, not of the specific issue of abortions. I mean, we can talk about that, but it's not the fundamental issue. To me, the fundamental issue is, do you or do you not have the right to do what you want with your own body? And I think that that's a discussion that we really need to have as a country, as a world. And, I believe that that's a right that we need to lay down for people.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly agree that that's a fundamental issue we need to address. I think the more concerning thing for me is, I'm very much focused on systems and how they have functioned for the longest time, and uh, the right of the Supreme Court to rule on what is constitutionally allowed and what is not in the
Mhm.
Constitution.
Yeah.
That's not a thing. So if they
Mhm.
start if they start sort of wobbling on these things, if they start sort of voting against what is already precedent for 50 years, we're going to start seeing a world where honestly the federal government's probably just going to start ignoring the Supreme Court.
Mhm.
That makes me very concerned. And
Or the Supreme Court will determine all of our laws, basically.
no,
They'll
they don't have the power to enforce any of that.
Well, right, but if we allow them to just decide which laws stand and which don't based on these kinds of things, and I understand that to some degree they have to interpret the laws and make sure that you know they are not just sorry, I'm kind of losing my train of thought, but
No, that's okay.
I get that they have a purpose there, but this is not what their intended purpose was. But if we allow them to take that role on, and the executive branch, enforces what they say, then they have become basically the deciders, like Bush.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Um, it does sort of bring me back to, India's Supreme Court. India's Supreme Court has a lot more power than ours, and my view on it is that whatever they say, it's province by province, or whatever they call their territories. I don't remember. But that's the law of the land, and it is enforced by their executive branch. But here we don't have that right now, and it would be frightening if that ended up happening. I don't look forward to that. If
Yeah.
that's a thing that happens, then I might just take my New Zealand citizenship and move to New Zealand. So
Yeah,
uh,
I mean, I think it's really unfortunate. Uh, the Supreme Court is such a political body these days. I mean,
right,
maybe it always has been or has been for a long time, but it's
yeah,
more overtly political now. And even though during confirmation hearings we pretend that it's not, uh,
right,
everyone knows,
yeah,
the truth of it.
yeah. And it's I wouldn't say it's more political than it ever has been. I would say it's less equal than it ever has been. Um, I think from what I've seen of previous courts, this is the court that does not have a balance to it. Um, I'm not happy about that at all. And I think that going against precedent in order to remove a right is something that is going to damage the court's um, legitimacy entirely. But I do agree, and I want to give due deference to your suggestion that we should be focusing on bodily autonomy. Um, in the United States, you don't own your body until you're dead. So,
Wow, we just passed an hour. So
Yep.
I don't know how long you wanted to be on here.
I
oh, I'm
You
here
know,
as long as you need me to be.
well,
Uh,
I think that this is
whatever.
probably a pretty good mark to set it at, actually.
all right. Well, I mean, we didn't get through anywhere near everything that I would like to, but I mean, you can't solve all the world's problems in one day, I guess. um, but if you're interested in what we're doing here and you want to come back, I'm happy to have you back on as a guest. You can also run streams like this if you want, talk to other people, um, you know, I want to try to explain a little bit more of the foundation that we're trying to lay here, so that
Right.
we're all on the same page. But otherwise, this is for everyone, and anyone who is sincerely interested in making this work, is welcome to participate pretty much as deeply as you want. So
Yeah, I mean, if you want me back on, just let me know. I'm fairly widely available lately, which is unusual to me, but still.
all right. Well, I appreciate you coming on, and we'll definitely have you back and other guests soon. Hopefully, we'll talk about some more issues, and if there is anything you want to talk about next time you come on, or if you want to request time to come on because you have something you want to talk about, just hit us up.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you. And we'll see everyone pretty soon, I think. Thank you.